Have you ever sat with someone who looked right on the outside, sounded right in conversation, even checked all the boxes people told you mattered, yet deep inside, something in your soul kept whispering, "This is not peace"? Have you ever tried to force your heart to settle? Tried to convince yourself to be grateful? Tried to ignore the unease because everything looked acceptable on paper? But no matter how hard you tried, the relationship still felt like walking uphill with a wounded heart? Maybe you blamed yourself. Maybe you said, "I am overthinking." Maybe you said, "No relationship is perfect." Maybe you said, "I just need to be more patient." Maybe you said, "Everyone around me approves, so this must be right." Maybe you stayed because you were afraid of being alone. Maybe you stayed because you had already invested your emotions. Maybe you stayed because leaving felt more painful than pretending. But what if that unease was not weakness? What if that heaviness was not confusion? What if the disturbance in your chest was not your heart failing you, but Allah protecting you? Because not every door that opens is meant to be entered. Not every person who appears good is good for your soul. Not every relationship that looks promising is written for your peace. And not every attachment is mercy, even if it feels deep. Sometimes Allah protects you quietly, not with thunder, not with a dramatic sign in the sky, but with a subtle disturbance in your spirit, with a repeated heaviness in your chest, with a relationship that keeps draining what Allah wants to preserve inside you, with a love that keeps costing you your peace, your clarity, your values, your prayer, your sincerity. And if you ignore those signs long enough, you may end up calling suffering love, calling spiritual misalignment patience, and calling emotional exhaustion commitment, when in reality Allah may be showing you again and again that this is not your road. That is why this matters. Because the wrong relationship does not always begin with obvious evil. It does not always look dangerous at first. Sometimes it looks beautiful. Sometimes it looks almost perfect. Sometimes it is full of chemistry, comfort, attention, and possibility. But if beneath all of that, your heart is drifting from Allah, your peace is disappearing, your standards are weakening, your soul is becoming restless, and your life is filling with hardship that teaches you nothing but exhaustion, then you need to stop and ask a serious question. Is this really love? Or is this a test I am refusing to understand? Today, I want to walk you through 5 undeniable signs that Allah may be protecting you from the wrong relationship. Not because He wants to deprive you. Not because He wants you lonely. Not because He does not know what your heart longs for. But because He knows what your soul cannot survive. He sees what you do not see. He knows what lies behind the door you are still begging to keep open. And sometimes His mercy appears in the very discomfort you are trying hardest to ignore. So listen with your heart. Because these signs are not random. They are not always just feelings. And they may be the very mercy that saves you from building your future in the wrong place. The first sign is this. You feel distant from Allah when you are around them. This is one of the clearest signs, and yet it is often the one people excuse the most. When you are with the right person, your faith should not have to fight for survival. Your soul should not feel like it is constantly being dragged away from what keeps it alive. You should not leave their presence spiritually weaker, morally looser, and emotionally more careless than before. But when someone is not right for you, one of the first things that begins to happen is subtle spiritual decline. You pray less carefully. You delay salah more easily. You stop opening the Quran the way you used to. Your dhikr becomes lighter. Your guilt becomes quieter. Your concern for Allah's pleasure becomes weaker. The heart that once rushed toward remembrance begins to move more slowly. And it does not always happen in one dramatic fall. Sometimes it happens gently, so gently that you barely notice it at first. You become so emotionally occupied by them that your inner world starts revolving around their messages, their moods, their approval, their attention, their plans, their presence. Your thoughts fill with them. And because the heart can only hold so much weight, something else begins to lose space. And often, that something is your relationship with Allah. This is dangerous. Because the one who is right for you should help your soul breathe, not suffocate it. They should make obedience feel more beautiful, not more burdensome. They should remind you of Allah by the way they carry themselves, the way they speak, the way they guard your dignity, the way they respect your boundaries, the way they help you protect what is sacred. The right person will not make you feel like you have to choose between emotional attachment and spiritual integrity. The right person will not make you weaker in your worship. The right person will not make you quieter before Allah and louder in heedlessness. And this is where many people confuse attachment with compatibility. Just because you think about them constantly does not mean they are good for you. Just because you miss them deeply does not mean they are written for your peace. Just because you feel emotionally drawn to them does not mean your soul is safe with them. Some people are powerful tests. Not because they are your destination, but because they reveal what still has too much power over your heart. Allah tells us to keep ourselves with those who remember Him morning and evening, those whose hearts are turned toward Him, and not to follow those who are heedless of His remembrance and follow only desire. That guidance is not only about friendship in the general sense. It teaches a deeper principle. The people closest to you will shape the condition of your heart. So look honestly. What happens to your soul around this person? Do you become better? Do you become softer in worship? Do you become more mindful of Allah? Do you feel inspired to protect your faith? Or do you become distracted, careless, compromised, emotionally addicted, and spiritually weaker? Because if being near them consistently takes you further from Allah, then you need to stop romanticizing what is harming you. You need to stop calling it destiny just because it is intense. Some intensity is not love. Some intensity is fitna. Some intensity is a warning. Some intensity is the heat of a door Allah is asking you not to walk through. If your connection with them keeps weakening your connection with Allah, that is not a small sign. That is a mercy signal. The second sign is this. Your peace is constantly disrupted. One of the names of Allah is As-Salam, the source of peace. And when Allah guides a believer toward what is right, there is often a deep kind of inner stability that comes with it. Not a life free of tests, not a relationship free of effort, but a type of peace that settles the soul even while challenges exist. But when a relationship is wrong for you, one of the first things it begins to steal is your inner calm. You overthink constantly. Your chest feels tight more often than it feels open. You keep checking, worrying, guessing, second guessing. You become emotionally unstable. You live in uncertainty. You do not feel safe. You do not feel settled. You do not feel like yourself. Instead of becoming a source of sakinah, the relationship becomes a source of emotional noise. And that matters because a relationship is not supposed to become a permanent storm in your soul. Yes, all relationships require effort. Yes, every human being comes with flaws. Yes, there will be misunderstandings. Yes, patience is required. But constant chaos is not the same as normal challenge. And many people stay trapped because they do not know the difference. A healthy relationship may test your maturity. An unhealthy one tests your nervous system every day. A healthy relationship may require compromise. An unhealthy one requires you to keep sacrificing your peace to keep it alive. A healthy relationship may go through seasons of difficulty. An unhealthy one makes difficulty feel like the permanent climate. That is not love. That is emotional erosion. Allah says that He sends tranquility into the hearts of the believers so that their faith may increase. Think about that. Tranquility strengthens faith. Peace nourishes the soul. A relationship that constantly robs you of that peace, leaving you anxious, drained, unsettled, and emotionally exhausted, deserves serious reflection. Because you cannot flourish spiritually in an environment of constant internal chaos. And people often ignore this sign because everything else seems good enough. Maybe the person is respected. Maybe the families approve. Maybe there are shared goals. Maybe there are good conversations. Maybe there is history. Maybe there is chemistry. Maybe it should work. But your soul keeps saying otherwise. You cannot sleep in peace. You cannot think clearly. You keep explaining away what your chest already knows. You keep telling yourself to endure what your ruh is trying to reject. And the longer you ignore your disturbed peace, the more you train yourself to distrust the signals Allah may be using to protect you. Sometimes the body knows before the mind admits it. Sometimes the soul feels what the eyes cannot yet explain. Sometimes your unease is not irrational, it is spiritual intelligence. And no, this does not mean that every discomfort is a sign to run. But when peace keeps disappearing, when your emotional world becomes a battlefield every time this person enters it, when what should be a source of comfort becomes a source of constant distress, then do not dismiss that. The right relationship should not feel like your soul is always bracing for impact. The right person will not make your entire inner life feel unstable. They will not make your heart feel homeless. Allah's mercy does not always arrive by giving you what you want. Sometimes it arrives by disturbing your peace until you finally realize this is not where you belong. The third sign is this. Their influence leads you towards sin. This is where the matter becomes even more serious. Because a wrong relationship does not only affect your emotions, it can slowly begin to reshape your moral life. Maybe you started compromising things that once mattered deeply to you. Maybe you began normalizing conversations, behaviors, boundaries, or situations that would have disturbed you before. Maybe what once felt clearly wrong now feels easy to excuse because your heart is attached. Maybe you keep saying it's not that bad, while inside you know this is not who you wanted to become. And this is one of the most dangerous things about emotional attachment. It can make sin feel softer. Not because the sin changed, but because the heart became invested in protecting the relationship more than protecting itself. You start negotiating with your conscience. You start bargaining with your values. You start making temporary compromises that slowly become your new standard. And all the while you tell yourself it is because you care. But the person meant for you should not require you to betray what Allah taught you to honor. They should not repeatedly place you in situations where your faith is weakened, your boundaries are crossed, and your soul leaves the interaction feeling dirtier than before. If their influence is making you more careless with your prayers, your modesty, your honesty, your speech, your emotional boundaries, your halal and haram, your priorities, your relationship with your family, or your sense of accountability before Allah, then this is not a small issue. This is a spiritual emergency. Allah warns against inclining toward wrongdoing. Why? Because when you remain too close to what is wrong, you do not stay unaffected. Influence enters quietly. You do not wake up one day completely different. You drift. One exception at a time, one excuse at a time, one rationalization at a time. And many relationships become dangerous not because the person is obviously evil, but because they gradually make you comfortable with what should still trouble you. That is why companionship matters so much in Islam. The people near you shape your horizon. They shape what feels normal. They shape how high or low your standards live. They shape what your heart starts tolerating. A righteous person will help protect your akhirah. A wrong person may slowly eat away at it while still making you feel loved. So ask yourself honestly, who am I becoming around them? Am I more truthful, more modest, more prayerful, more careful with Allah's rights, more disciplined, more sincere? Or am I slowly becoming someone who excuses what I know I should resist? Because love that costs you your obedience is too expensive. Attachment that weakens your deen is not mercy. And any relationship that repeatedly invites you to compromise your values is not something to romanticize. It may be one of the clearest signs that Allah is protecting you by exposing it for what it is. The fourth sign is this: you experience continual hardship without growth. This one is subtle because people often misuse patience in the wrong place. They think staying longer always means being more faithful. They think enduring more pain always means being more mature. They think if something is difficult, then perhaps that means it is valuable. But hardship alone is not proof that a relationship is worth keeping. Not all pain is meaningful. Not all struggle is sacred. Not all difficulty is a sign that you should stay. Yes, life includes tests. Yes, relationships take work. Yes, every bond goes through strain. But there is a profound difference between a hardship that refines you and a hardship that only keeps draining you. A refining hardship teaches. It matures. It humbles. It deepens. It helps both people grow. It reveals weakness and gives room for it to be healed. It brings lessons, progress, and a greater closeness to Allah. But a destructive hardship does something else. It keeps repeating the same wound, the same cycle, the same argument, the same pain, the same exhaustion, the same emotional depletion. Nothing deepens. Nothing improves. Nothing changes. You keep carrying the relationship while it keeps crushing parts of you. You keep hoping one day it will become what it has never shown real signs of becoming. You keep investing more patience into something that returns only more heaviness. You keep calling it sabr when in reality it may be fear of letting go. And that is where you need to be honest. Is this relationship making me stronger in faith, wisdom, and character? Or is it just making me tired? Because those are not the same thing. Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear, and His tests come with wisdom. They are not meant to hollow you out until you forget yourself. They are not meant to trap you in endless emotional suffocation while you call it loyalty. Allah does not ask you to worship pain. He asks you to trust Him. And sometimes trusting Him means recognizing that the relationship is no longer a lesson in patience. It is a lesson in release. This is especially important because many people stay in draining relationships out of false hope. They say, if I just try harder, if I just wait longer, if I just sacrifice more, if I just become more understanding. But not every relationship is waiting for your extra effort to become healthy. Some are only proving again and again that they are not meant to continue. A relationship should not permanently feel like a prison sentence for your heart. It should not leave you spiritually depleted, emotionally thin, mentally exhausted, and chronically burdened with no fruit except more pain. The right relationship may challenge you, but it will not endlessly crush you. It may test you, but it will not erase you. It may require patience, but it will also contain mercy, growth, support, and movement. If the hardship is constant and the growth is absent, if the pain keeps multiplying and the person keeps failing to contribute to your betterment, then stop calling that normal. It may be Allah showing you that this burden is not one He intends for you to keep carrying. Sometimes Allah closes a door through repetition, not with one shocking event, but by letting the same emptiness, the same pain, and the same dead end appear over and over until your heart finally stops arguing with what your soul already knows. The fifth sign is this: you feel uneasy even though everything looks right. This may be the hardest sign for people to trust, because from the outside the relationship may appear almost perfect. The person seems decent. There is family approval. You share values. The timing looks right. The future looks possible. Everything seems aligned. And yet, your chest is not calm. There is a subtle unrest, a feeling you cannot explain, a heaviness that does not disappear, a quiet resistance in your soul, a discomfort that shows up even when your mind tries to silence it. And because you cannot point to one obvious disaster, you start doubting yourself. You say, maybe I'm just scared. Maybe this is normal. Maybe I'm being too picky. Maybe I just need to trust the process. Maybe I'm overthinking. But perhaps you are not overthinking. Perhaps Allah is protecting you through a truth your mind has not fully understood yet. Allah tells us that perhaps we love something that is bad for us, and perhaps we dislike something that is good for us. He knows and we do not know. That verse is not just about big life events in the abstract. It speaks directly to the limits of human perception. We see surfaces, Allah sees consequences. We see appearances, Allah sees reality. We see potential, Allah sees the road that comes after. So just because a relationship appears right does not mean it is right for your soul. Compatibility on paper is not the same as alignment before Allah. Family approval is not the same as inner peace. Shared interests are not the same as spiritual harmony. External readiness is not the same as divine suitability. And the heart knows when something is off. Not because the heart is always perfect, but because Allah can place a disturbance there as mercy, a subtle warning, a quiet unrest, a feeling that says, do not settle just because this looks acceptable, a feeling that says, there is something here your eyes cannot yet explain, a feeling that says, this may satisfy the world, but it will not nourish your soul. This is why not all discomfort should be dismissed. It should be examined. Where is it coming from? Is it fear of commitment in general? Or is it a deeper misalignment? Is it anxiety from past wounds? Or is it spiritual caution? Does this relationship make you feel more authentic before Allah or less? Do you feel more able to be righteous, peaceful, honest and whole, or more pressured to ignore what your heart keeps signaling? Sometimes Allah protects you by making the soul restless in a place your mind is trying to call safe. And one of the saddest things a person can do is betray that inner unrest just because they are afraid of disappointing others. How many people walk into relationships because they are tired of waiting? How many accept good enough because they are afraid of loneliness? How many silence the soul because everything looks respectable from the outside? But a life decision this serious cannot be built on appearances alone. The heart matters. The soul matters. Your peace matters. Your future with Allah matters. And if everything looks right, but your spirit keeps shrinking, your peace keeps slipping, and your soul keeps resisting, then do not ignore that. That may be Allah's mercy arriving before disaster. So what do you do when these signs begin appearing? You pause. You stop romanticizing what is harming you. You stop forcing your soul to accept what your spirit keeps rejecting. You stop calling every attachment love. You stop calling every difficulty a test to endure. You stop assuming that because you want it badly, it must be right. Instead, you return to Allah. You make dua with honesty. You ask for basira, for insight. You ask Him to remove what is not for you, even if your heart is attached. You ask Him to protect you from confusing desire with destiny. You ask Him to expose what you cannot see. You ask Him to make truth clear and falsehood unbearable. You ask Him for courage, not just clarity, but courage. Because often the hardest part is not seeing the sign. The hardest part is obeying it. The hardest part is letting go of someone you thought could be your future. The hardest part is accepting that what looks almost right may still be deeply wrong. The hardest part is believing that Allah's wisdom is kinder than your plans. But this is where faith becomes real. Faith is not only trusting Allah when the answer matches your desire. Faith is trusting Him when His protection arrives in a form your nafs wanted to resist. Faith is believing that if He is moving you away, it is not because He wants less for you, but because He knows what would break you if you stayed. And understand this clearly. Letting go of the wrong relationship is not failure. It is not weakness. It is not losing your chance. It is not missing out on love. Sometimes it is the first true act of self-respect you offer your soul for the sake of Allah. Sometimes it is the moment you stop begging for crumbs from a connection that keeps starving your spirit. Sometimes it is the decision that opens the door to a peace you never could have found by staying. Because the right relationship will not require you to betray your deen in order to keep it. The right relationship will not keep your heart living in chronic unrest. The right relationship will not normalize your spiritual decline. The right relationship will not keep dragging you toward compromise. The right relationship will not leave you endlessly drowning in hardship with no real fruit except exhaustion. And the right relationship will not force your soul to ignore the warning Allah keeps placing in your chest. The right person may not be perfect, but they will not make your path to Allah harder. They will not make you miss yourself. They will not cost you your inner peace every day. They will not leave your soul constantly negotiating with warning signs. They will feel different. Not necessarily easy in every moment, but clean, safe, grounded, merciful, supportive, righteous, peaceful in a way that strengthens your faith instead of starving it. So if you are in a season where your heart is confused, where attachment is pulling you one way and your soul is whispering another, then do not ignore the whispers. Do not mock your discomfort. Do not dismiss your spiritual decline. Do not keep decorating a door Allah may be trying to close. Do not keep calling a burden love just because you are afraid of emptiness. Allah does not remove something good from you to leave you empty. He removes what harms you to make room for what is cleaner. He disturbs your peace in the wrong place so you do not settle for it. He exposes what drains your faith so you can return to what restores it. He lets your heart feel the wrongness of something before your life becomes trapped inside it. That is not cruelty. That is care. That is guidance. That is mercy before the damage becomes deeper. So trust Him. Trust Him if the relationship looks perfect but your soul does not rest. Trust Him if you feel yourself becoming spiritually weaker. Trust Him if your peace keeps vanishing. Trust Him if the influence is darkening your values. Trust Him if the hardship is endless and your heart keeps losing itself inside it. Trust Him if everything in your chest is telling you this is not the road. Because perhaps the thing you are grieving is the very thing Allah is saving you from. Perhaps the person you are afraid to lose is the one standing between you and your peace. Perhaps the relationship you keep trying to preserve is the very place your soul is slowly suffocating. And perhaps what you call heartbreak today will one day become one of the greatest mercies of your life. One day you may look back and thank Allah for the discomfort, for the unease, for the heaviness, for the repeated signs, for the prayers that felt unanswered, for the door that would not stay open no matter how badly you wanted it to. Because later you will understand, Allah was not depriving you. He was guarding you. He was protecting your faith, protecting your peace, protecting your future, protecting your soul from a love that could never carry what He created you for. So if you needed a sign, perhaps this is it. Anything that repeatedly distances you from Allah, steals your peace, leads you towards sin, traps you in fruitless hardship, and leaves your soul uneasy, no matter how attractive it appears, is not something to ignore. It is something to bring before Allah with complete honesty. And if He is moving you away, then let yourself trust that the one who created your heart knows exactly where it will find rest. You do not need a relationship that looks right to the world but feels wrong before Allah. You do not need a person who excites your emotions while draining your soul. You do not need a bond that keeps costing you your peace. You need what Allah has written with mercy. And what Allah writes with mercy will never require you to lose yourself in order to keep it. So let go if you must. Cry if you need to. Grieve what you hoped it would become. But do not confuse letting go with losing. Sometimes letting go is the moment Allah finally frees your soul. And the peace waiting on the other side of that surrender may be greater than anything you were trying so hard to hold on to.